Millionaire raises the glass to her lips until a homeless boy shouts, "Don't drink that!" Mateus saw the danger before anyone else. Outside the mansion, among the imported cars and armed guards, he was just another kid selling bottled water, invisible, ignored, but always watchful. Inside, everything sparkled. Expensive clothes, staged laughter, gleaming glasses. Billionaire Isabella Navarro's event gathered business leaders, politicians, celebrities, a world immune to problems, or so it seemed. Mateus hadn't gone inside. He couldn't, but he observed as he always did. That's when he saw the man in the grey suit. He wasn't a waiter. He wasn't a familiar guest. He was too quick, too cautious. He passed by the main table where 5 glasses waited for the official toast. He touched one, adjusted it, swapped it. He hid it well, but not well enough. Mateus froze. His chest tightened. The man disappeared into the crowd, and seconds later, Isabella appeared. She walked with the confidence of someone at the top. She picked up the tampered glass, raised her arm. The toast was about to begin, and Mateus shouted, "Don't drink that!" The sound cut through the gate, tearing apart the festive mood. A dry silence fell. Heads turned. Security reacted. Mateus ran. He slipped under the railing, dodged the first guard, and shouted again, "Someone messed with that glass! I saw it!" He was pinned to the ground, arms immobilized. One guest laughed. Another cursed. "Where did this kid come from? Somebody call the police. This is absurd." Isabella still held the glass high. She looked at the boy trapped by the guards, his eyes locked on hers. No fear, just urgency. She lowered the glass. "Let him go." Mateus stood breathless. The crowd around them seemed ready to judge. "What did you say?" Isabella asked. "A man tampered with that glass. I saw it. Grey suit. He swapped it for another one." Nervous laughter, whispered comments. "She's not really going to believe some street kid, is she?" Isabella didn't answer. She turned to one of her aides. "Test it, now." "Ma'am, this could cause discomfort. Imagine if it's just a prank." "I don't joke about poison. Test it." Minutes later, an expert arrived. Discreetly. He used a simple reagent, dipped a test strip into the glass. The color changed. The guests weren't laughing anymore. The expert spoke softly, but everyone heard. "Something's wrong here. There's a toxic substance." A chill swept through the hall. Isabella said nothing for a moment, then she looked at her aide. "Review the cameras and find the man in the grey suit." The monitoring room went into a frenzy. The footage rewound to the exact moment. There he was. The man moved as if he belonged to the staff, approaching the table, glancing around, swapping the glass. There was no doubt. One of the guards confirmed. Marcelo Tavares, Chief Financial Officer, one of the longest-serving executives. Isabella didn't react, didn't even blink. "Find him, now!" The man tried to leave through the back, perfectly combed hair, the look of someone who still thought he could get away with it. But it was too late. He was caught right there, in front of the security cameras and all the eyes that had ignored the boy's warning. Back in the hall, Isabella returned to the center. She picked up the microphone. She didn't smile. "The toast is cancelled." Absolute silence. And tonight, the one who saved me wasn't security nor technology. It was a boy out there. She pointed to Mateus, still looking out of place among the polished floors and expensive gowns. And he deserves to be heard. The party never became a party again. But for Mateus, that shout was the beginning of something nobody, not even him, could have imagined. The glass didn't lie. The test confirmed it. Poison. A rare compound, colorless, odorless, lethal within minutes. And it had been there, about to be drunk in the night's toast. Inside the mansion, luxury now tasted like threat. Guests once relaxed now whispered in contained panic. Phones recorded, eyes darted. Isabella Navarro, in the center of the room, held the test strip firmly in her hand. She showed no fear, but inside, her pulse hammered. She looked at the boy, that skinny kid, covered in dust, who had burst in shouting and turned the world upside down. "Come with me." She led Mateus to the security room. There, the cameras revealed everything in detail. The man in the grey suit, Marcelo Tavares, clearly swapping the glass. An employee zoomed in. Clear face, precise movement. Isabella didn't take her eyes off the screen. "That man has worked with me for 7 years, she said, more to herself than to the others. "He didn't look scared," Mateus commented. She looked at him. There was something in the way he spoke. Direct, no sugarcoating, no attempt to impress, just truth. "No," she replied. He looked like he knew exactly what he was doing. Marcelo tried escaping through the back, but security had locked down the perimeter. He was caught near the garage, pretending to be on a call, as if he were just another executive leaving early. He had no chance. When they brought him back, handcuffed, the hall fell silent. The eyes, once fixed on Isabella, now turned on him, and everything he represented. Betrayed trust. Real danger. A death averted. He tried to argue, spoke of mistakes, confusion, even a setup, but the cameras were clear, the tests too, and more than that, truth already had a face, Mateus's face. Police arrived quickly, took statements, isolated the tampered glass, took Marcelo into custody. Isabella remained standing as everything unraveled. Guests trickled out, bewildered. The music cut off, the piano silenced. Only muffled footsteps remained, along with the constant click of the press cameras, now pointed at the true protagonist of the night. Mateus, still standing in the corner, frozen, as if he didn't know where he belonged. Isabella approached. "Do you have someone waiting for you?" He hesitated. "My sister, Camilla. She's at the square. We share everything. Sleep in a little spot in the warehouse near the station." She nodded. "You saved my life. I want to know more about yours." That same night, Isabella's black car stopped in front of the square. Camilla, 8 years old with huge eyes, ran to Mateus the moment she saw him get out. "Where were you? I was so scared." Mateus crouched and hugged his sister, tight. Isabella watched the scene in silence. The contrast between the two worlds had never been so visible. She walked toward them. Camilla stared at her with suspicion. Mateus tensed up. But Isabella crouched down until she was at their level. "I owe you something that can't be repaid, but I can try, and it starts with a safe place to sleep tonight." The Navarro mansion looked very different from the inside. Mateus and Camilla were received by a discreet but caring team. They were given a bath, clean clothes, hot food. Camilla fell asleep quickly. Mateus didn't. He walked silently down the hallway until he found Isabella sitting in the office, staring at a screen. Spreadsheets, names, stocks, an empire at risk. "You're not going to sleep?" he asked. She glanced sideways, a faint smile. "I just found out I almost died from a single sip. It's not easy to switch off after that." Mateus stood in the doorway. "Why did he do it?" She sighed. "Power, money, control. People like that don't accept being in second place. Marcelo had access to everything, but he wanted more." Mateus thought for a moment. "And nobody saw?" "No, only you." Hours later, the news began to circulate. Attempted murder at luxury party. Homeless boy prevents crime. Billionaire saved by stranger. Mateus's name was no longer just an echo lost in the city center. It was a headline. But he didn't know that. He was asleep on the couch, covered up to his chin, his face relaxed as if for the first time he wasn't afraid of the night. Isabella watched him from the doorway. In silence, That child everyone ignored had saved her life and changed it too. The next morning, she decided that Mateus's gesture would not just be remembered, it would be recognized, for real and permanently. Mateus's face was on the front page of the newspapers that morning. Boy stops murder attempt at elite party. The hero no one saw coming. Street child saves billionaire. The headlines spread like wildfire, and with them, questions. Who was this boy? Where did he come from? Why did he risk everything for someone who had never even seen him before? But inside the Navarro mansion, far from the cameras, Mateus was still just a 12-year-old boy, slowly waking up on a couch that felt too soft to be real. Camilla was already awake, sitting in an armchair, holding a cup of milk with both hands. Clean clothes, her feet tucked into fluffy socks. She looked around as if she still didn't trust her own dream. Isabella walked into the room, no heels, no jewelry. She wore a dark sweatshirt, her hair loosely tied back. She wasn't the billionaire from the party, just a woman with dark circles under her eyes and a decision stuck in her throat. "We need to talk." Mateus told her everything, how he had been selling water since he was 9, how he and Camilla took turns sleeping to stay safe, how the warehouse where they lived was shared with other families, how sometimes they ate, sometimes they didn't. Isabella listened in silence. She didn't interrupt, didn't correct, didn't explain. She just listened, truly listened. When he finished, she asked, "What would you do if you had a chance?" Mateus looked at his sister. She stared back at him with those eyes that had always counted on him. Always. "I'd give her a real life, school, a home, the things everyone else seems to already have." Isabella nodded. "Then that's what we're going to do." The news spread hours later. Isabella Navarro would personally take temporary custody of the siblings until everything was made official through the courts. A lawyer was called, a social worker too, everything done urgently and discreetly. But nothing in Isabella's life escaped the media for long. Billionaire adopts boy who saved her from death. New chapter for the most powerful woman in real estate. Some applauded, others questioned. Marketing? Guilt? Public image? Isabella ignored it all. For the first time, she wasn't answering questions. She was just acting. She took Mateus and Camilla to the warehouse where they had lived. She wanted to see it with her own eyes. She didn't send anyone else. She went herself. When the black car turned the corner and stopped in front of the abandoned building, the impact was immediate. The peeling walls, the filthy mattresses on the floor, the strong smell. Barefoot children running around, people who had learned to hide, even in plain sight. Isabella stepped out of the car without an escort. Mateus went in first, leading the way. He showed her where they slept, where they hid their backpack, where Camilla drew pictures on the wall with charcoal. She looked at it all, not with pity, with anger. "This isn't invisible. This is ignored," she said, almost in a whisper. On the way out, she asked, "How many families live here?" Mateus shrugged. 10, 12, maybe more. Nobody counts. Back at the mansion, she called meetings, cancelled appointments, rewrote plans. "I want a safe house for each of these families," she told her team. "Not a shelter, a house, with their name on the deed, with a key in hand." No one questioned her. She was determined. The following week, Mateus and Camilla started attending a private school. It was strange at first. The new clothes, the school supplies, the transport. But Mateus learned quickly. He was hungry for knowledge. Camilla even more. Isabella went with them the first few days. She waited outside, watching them walk through the gates. Still small, but now seen. On television, the case was still making waves. Marcelo Tavares, the former director, was in preventive custody. Police investigated his connections, his possible motives. Attempted homicide, premeditation, abuse of trust. Meanwhile, The public's eyes shifted. It wasn't just about the crime anymore. It was about what came after. One night, Mateus approached the mansion's balcony. Isabella was there, looking at the city like someone observing her own world from the outside. "You changed everything," he said without warning. She turned her face. "I wasn't the one who started it." Mateus leaned on the railing. "You could have forgotten about us after that. Said thank you and moved on." Isabella took a deep breath. "This isn't charity. It's repair. I spent my life thinking I was helping the world by signing checks. But donating isn't enough. You have to step down, look someone in the eye, listen." Mateus looked up at the sky. "Camilla dreams of having a room of her own, pink walls, fairy lights." Isabella smiled. "Then that's where we'll start." The trial of Marcelo Tavares began 23 days after the attempted murder. In the courtroom, he maintained the posture of a successful executive. Impeccable suit, chin raised. But the world around him was no longer the same. The cameras showed what he had done. The test confirmed the poison. Prosecutors detailed the plan. Poison Isabella Navarro, clear the way for a multi-million-dollar embezzlement, and seize control of part of her companies. It was cold, calculated, corporate. But what brought Marcelo down wasn't just the evidence, it was the contrast. On one side, an educated, well-dressed, respected man. On the other, a barefoot boy no one wanted to hear, who had saved a life. Mateus didn't need to be in the courtroom, but his presence was felt in every sentence, every image, every mention of what happened that night. The sentence was read in silence. 16 years in prison, premeditated crime, attempted aggravated homicide. Marcelo left in handcuffs, for the first time facing the real weight of what he had tried and failed to do. Meanwhile, away from the headlines, change was happening. Isabella didn't back down. She created a private fund to get families off the streets. No promises on social media, no publicity, direct work, name by name, house by house. The warehouse where Mateus and Camilla had slept became a community school, with a library, internet, meals, psychologists and teachers funded with her personal money. Along with the project came its name, Project Shout, in honor of a simple phrase, shouted at the right time. Mateus and Camilla now lived in a 2-bedroom house with bright walls and the smell of new paint. Camilla had her pink room, fairy lights, a bed with patterned blankets. Mateus had books, notebooks, sneakers, but above all, he had a voice. And it was that voice he used 2 months later in a school presentation. It was the last day of the semester. Parents, teachers, and students listened in silence. When his name was called, he walked onto the stage, clean shirt, steady eyes. The microphone trembled in his hand, but his voice did not. Some people think courage is about facing danger, but sometimes courage is just telling the truth when nobody wants to hear it. He paused. The silence was absolute. "I'm not special. I just saw what everyone else ignored, and I shouted. Because if no one listens to those on the outside, what's wrong never changes." Another second. No one is too small to change the world. All it takes is someone willing to listen. Applause. Not out of pity, out of respect. Camilla was crying in the front row, Isabella beside her too. On the way out, reporters tried to approach. Mateus just smiled and walked away, pulling his sister by the hand. He didn't want fame, he wanted a path. And now he had one. The city moved on, the parties continued, but something had changed. In offices and meetings, Mateus's name was mentioned as a symbol. In schools, as an example. In simple homes, as hope. That boy who once shouted from outside was now being heard everywhere, because it only took a moment, a voice, a glass raised, and a shout that changed everything. Sometimes, All that separates tragedy from change is a single voice refusing to stay silent. Mateus had no stage, no last name. He only had watchful eyes and the courage to shout when everyone else told him to stay quiet. And it was that shout that saved a life. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, outrage, or a will to act, then don't let it pass. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder. That truth can come from where no one looks. That courage has no address. And that every invisible voice, when heard, can change everything. Like, comment, subscribe, but above all, listen.